Thank you for your interest to the topic. I'm going to talk about the topic which might be not such visible, for example, in the social media, like from the point of view of the coverage by social media, in comparison, for example, for bombardment or attacks on the Ukrainian cities. This is the problem of missing people in the context of Russian aggression, and this is a really huge problem. Just maybe several minutes to give a background on the organization which I represent today. So we called Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group. Originally, we come from the city of Kharkiv, which is about 50 kilometers from Russian border. And it's probably the oldest organization in Ukraine, human rights protection organization, but it has also its roots in dissident movements in the Soviet Union. The idea of organization was to protect human rights from state interference, but in 2014 there was no other option and no other chance. When the Russian aggression started against Ukraine, we had to document international crimes and human rights violation in the context of Russian aggression. That's because at least in Kharkiv city and the whole region, there's a high trust to the organization, and many people just considered our organization as a focal point to come and to witness and to testify what they have suffered from or what they have been witnessing. So you can inform yourself by visiting our website, and you see that there's a huge, a big range of topics we are covering, and war crimes and war-related violations is a big part of our work. In 2022, when the full-scale invasion has started, together with other two trustees, Center for Civil Liberties and Ukrainian Helsinki Human Rights Union, we have established a coalition. And the core of this coalition is to document evidence of international crimes happening in Ukraine. It's called Tribunal for Putin. You can also visit this website and see the live statistics of what's happening, what's documented. You see that we have different categories and different options of categories, and we also rely on, when documenting, on the legal definition of the Rome Statute. So that documented incidents have really evidential value for the International Criminal Court, but also for national prosecutions. And now coming to the point about the problem of missing people, because in our documentation work and legal work, we have this also a big component on working with the problem of missing people. So this is not a problem which happened or became a big problem since 2022. There were incidents before full-scale invasion, and the number here is 622. This is the incidents which were in the Article 15 communication of our organization to the ICC. But now you can compare the scope of what's happening, and this is preliminary numbers, and these are the numbers of people who have the status of missing people, and you can imagine how many people are missing still more because their relatives did not send applications to police, or so there's even more. So different statistics says up to 80,000. And this is both civilians and military personnel of Ukraine. I just want to give you an idea what are the scenarios, how people end up with the status of missing people or enforced disappeared when it's adjudicated or identified by national authorities. So a lot of people have gone missing because they were arrested by Russians during so-called sweeping their occupied territories, cleansing the territory because they were non-loyal to Russian occupation, they were oppressing it. They were also arrested for opposing so-called special military operation. So this is the identification of, or the explanation by Russia what the invasion of Ukraine is. During filtration procedures, people have gone missing. For example, you might have heard about the siege of the city of Mariupol in 2022, and still people try to evacuate themselves and their families from this city. Mostly it was possible only towards the Russian territory, the territory of Russian Federation, and they had to go compulsory through filtration procedures which Russian military have introduced. So they were looking for any signs of cooperation with Ukrainian authorities or later employment within Ukrainian authorities. For example, the mother of small child, they were separated during this filtration procedure because before going to maternity leave, she was employed in tax authority in Ukraine, and that was like suspicious for Russians. There's also, of course, people who have been in different entities before full-scale invasion in different psychoneurological entities. Of course, prisoners from Ukrainian penitentiary institutions or persons who have been in pretrial detention in territories which have been captured and occupied by Russia. Then the scenarios are different. So these people might, for a very long time, be in illegal detention without any formal accusation, without any solid ground, kept incommunicado, or they are charged with some criminal articles from the Criminal Code of Russian Federation, and they go through sham trials, so they get convictions, very often life imprisonment. There are also documented accidents when Ukrainian citizens were granted forcibly by Russian citizenship so that they can be accused of crimes which are only applicable to Russian citizens, which is, it might sound weird, but that's more enabling environment when people still have some procedural status if they are under criminal procedure in Russia or in the occupied territories, because now then they have a status procedural under the legislation, and it opens the doors for lawyers to visit them and to at least collect any information about the status of their health and are they alive at all. With military servicemen is a bit different scenarios. So for example, of course, if military servicemen are killed and their body not found, they are under Ukrainian legislation disappeared under special circumstances. So this is specifically Ukrainian legislation. And if they are allegedly captured, whereabouts are known or unknown, they are prisoners of war under international humanitarian law, but not under the approach of Russia, because, as I said, in many cases, these people are not considered by Russia as prisoners of war because actually Russian Federation does not understand invasion of Ukraine as an armed conflict under IHL, but considers a special military operation, so deprives Ukrainian prisoners of war of freedom for counteraction of special military operation. So again, if they are convicted, and it happens that they, after being illegally detained, detained in special centers, they then go through criminal procedures, and if they are convicted, so they appear in the database of Federal Penitentiary Service of Russian Federation, which makes these people visible at least, and it opens again the room for identification where they are. But anyway, if they are imprisoned or they are in detention without any criminal investigations, very often they are severely tortured. The work what we do to help searching for such people, to support families of missing people. So since 2023, we have launched the hotline for families of missing people, so they can give calls and report about the situation, and then we will proceed with legal assistance to the people, help to submit requests to different Ukrainian authorities, but also to Russian authorities and to the international bodies. For example, UN Working Group on Enforced Disappearances. The information about and documentation of these cases also comes from monitoring visits of lawyers of our organization, to the occupied territories, which is important. Point number 3, to the occupied territories, which usually gives a lot of information and about a lot of material. Then we also, if people calling to the hotline or who we identify within monitoring visits, we interview them. Someone of that people would like to stay, of course, to keep their information disclosed, their names, but some people agree that the interviews might be also published on the website of our organization. So of course it depends on what victims are feeling about that. Then the lawyers of our organization, as I said, provide legal aid and legal representation of them in national Ukrainian authorities. A part of that, we are doing a lot of OSINT work to identify places where Ukrainian civilians and military servicemen are kept, and I will talk about it in a second. And also, with all this information collected, we of course take efforts to secure this evidence, and we have a special dedicated database of missing people where it's visible what's the situation with the case, if the person is identified or not, what are the efforts of our lawyers. It's apart from the database which is in the coalition of Tribunal for Putin. So with this OSINT work, with interviewing witnesses, with interviewing released persons, our organization has identified 38 detention centers in Russia where Ukrainians are kept, 14 detention centers in the temporarily occupied territories, and we have the list of 2,500 captives, both military personnel and civilians. Also drawing from OSINT, from interviewing released persons, from families which are calling to us or visiting our offices. And yeah, so in the database today we have 9,803 persons which are claimed by their families as missing. 30% of them are prisoners of war. This is the status which claimed by the families. Yeah, so missing without whereabouts, civilian and military. You see the percentage, and also there's a small number of missing children, also allegedly killed or transported. So at the moment we don't know. But with the work of our organization, we have identified 214 people who, from this number, then their whereabouts are established. On the rest, we keep working, searching for people by submitting applications to the national Ukrainian authorities, international Committee of the Red Cross, to Russian authorities, which are allegedly in charge of keeping the data about people, but also submitting reports to UN Working Group on Enforced Disappearances and involuntary disappearances, but also in case if the cases also includes torture, we submit communications to the UN Committee on Torture. So with that, I mean, I was thinking about takeaways which we need to elaborate, but also to communicate to the colleagues throughout the world. Yeah, the problem of missing people is not so visible, as I said, but it definitely indicates also the persecutory nature of Russian aggression. As I said, that one of the scenarios that people end up with the status of missing person is that they are previously persecuted or discriminated by Russian occupying authorities in occupied territories because of their non-loyalty or explicit pro-Ukrainian position. With given different understanding on what is international armed conflict, Russia is keeping hollowing out and devaluing international recognized rules, and rules of warfare as well. The general call is that all Ukrainian civilians, which is important, must be returned unconditionally, because with exchanges which are happening in Ukraine from time to time, there's some part of civilians who are being brought back to Ukraine, which is, of course, a very good development, but apart or in comparison with Ukrainian prisoners of war, Ukrainian civilians are illegally imprisoned and they have no status, and that means that must be returned unconditionally. The same with prisoners of war, and there's also a need for interim and comprehensive reparations, because people who are released, both military and civilians, they, in 90% of cases, they are going through severe torture. And Russia every day invents new types of how to torture people with, and also depriving, the element of this torture is depriving Ukrainian identity in different forms. Of course, this is the call for accountability, both like with legal means, but also continued political and economical pressure on Russia on that platforms where it is still present. And also, I think that the important element that non-state organizations and transnational corporations also must always keep in mind and carry out heightened human rights due diligence, taking into consideration these crimes, but also other scope of crimes which committed by Russia against Ukrainian people. Thank you. 7 minutes over. It's 7 minutes left? Yeah. Wow.
Thank you very much. Questions, please.
Thank you so much, Katerina, and for your presentation and for the work that you and the Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group are doing. I have two questions, if I may. One is sort of methodological, because I noticed that you, and I think the Ukrainian authorities use the terms missing persons and enforced disappearances sort of interchangeably. And since you use the terminology in your database of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, do you qualify all of these cases as enforced disappearances or something else? And how do you kind of distinguish within the organization between these two? And then my second question concerns the commission that has been formed in Ukraine on missing persons. Yeah, I know it's kind of a dormant entity, but I was just wondering if it's still functioning, and if so, what is your interaction with it, or what do you see as the prospects for its future, for its work in the future on this issue?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question, because the first one, but the second is also nice. Yeah, I mean, of course, there's legal, there's all the legal interpretation of the different statutes. I would say that in Ukraine, but I don't think it's specifically for Ukrainian case, but if we talk about legal qualification for the aim of accountability, for example, under Ukrainian legislation, what we see that when there's a fact that someone is gone missing, then the compulsory step is that the family of this person need to go to the national police to open and register the criminal investigation. It's really important because then it's the starting point for other like steps. And what I see that in this reports from this criminal investigations, that national police qualifies this allegedly as Article 115, it's killing the person. So it alleges that this is the killing of the person. Then so in our database, we of course use the terminology of the Rome Statute and the Article 7 enforced disappearances. And actually we are going to present another Article 15 communication based on cases which we have, and many of them are coming from this database. And then if we are not talking about accountability, but like confirming the status of such persons, for example, for the aim of reparations or like social benefits for the families of these persons. Then in Ukrainian legislation, it's called, oh my God, it's called a person which is missing because of special conditions. So, I mean, you can guess maybe translation into Ukrainian or Russian language. So this is the status which the paper which you need to have necessarily for the all other further steps. So it actually confirms that this person is missing because of special conditions which are identified by the law, and armed conflict is one of that special conditions. And also now there's a new approach which is communicated from the government. There's also necessary to have a confirmation from the military unit, because military unit need to go through like internal investigation. And internal investigation. So like a lot of steps to confirm the status, but like we distinguish it for accountability goals and for social benefits, for reparations. For example, to submit a claim to the register of damage, which is like now run by the Council of Europe, on the category of disappeared person, you have to have this special confirmation from Ukrainian national authorities. Otherwise, it's not valid, your claim. So I don't know if I addressed your question. And also there's a special article in Ukrainian criminal code which is called enforced disappearances. Right. However, as I see, it's not it's not in this national police reports, so they do not actually apply this article. Neither they apply special article on war crimes, 438. So, yeah, I mean, we want also to maybe discuss with national authorities about this approach.
And if I may follow up on that concerning children, because I noticed that in one of your slides, the earlier slides, you didn't have that as a sort of special category, but in the end, yeah, there was addressed, so children are sort of considered. What is that treated? Are they treated specially?
No, they are not treated. I mean, this is the cases where there are really no whereabouts of these children. They allegedly are killed during the military like hostilities over there. So it's not. We have a special work on deportation of children and special dedicated Article 15 communication. Yeah, but mostly this database, I mean, claims are coming and they are relating to adults. That's what we have at the moment in the database. And on the commission, I'm not sure what, I mean, this is the governmental commission. I mean, as lawyers, we do not work a lot with it because other entities like National Informational Bureau which is like in charge of tracing missing people, and special units in the Ministry of Interior. These are the authorities which we work formally with them.
All right.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Bravo. Bravo.